concentrate.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can share it and you just tell me to pass if you want.
Okay, great. So I think overall the presentation will have no more than 8 slides, I believe. Our idea was just to have something to speak over. And so I will be talking a little bit about us, Armilar, and Rodolfo will talk a little bit about the chances and the opportunities that are in, let's say, making a living in creating a company. So
well, let me just thank you very much. Before I forgot, I'm sorry I forgot to do that, but I'd like to thank José and Rodolfo for using your time and sharing your time with us and your experience and knowledge. So I think it's great for all the participants. At ISR, this kind of activities has always been very important. So we have spun off maybe 10 to 15 companies all over the years, companies that have been, they've extended our roots to society in many ways, and we try to keep this community alive in many ways. We are proud of this community, and also we want to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs and innovative spirits. So we have many here and people with very exciting ideas, and I think it's really great that they have the opportunity to listen your presentation, and then generously you offer to a follow-up session that we can on a one-to-one basis or in a closer contact to follow up on some of the ideas. So I think it's great. And also I've said already some of the founders of some of our spin-offs are here with us today. So maybe they'd like to say, or to express their views at some point and comment. So I think it's a great ensemble of people that we have here today. So I shut up now, and thanks a lot, and the stage is yours.
No, thank you. We are the ones that thank you, because it's always a pleasure to return to Institute Superior Technique. It's our home. As you will see, we are, in some way, we are the IST spin-off also. We'll see it later. So, Rodolfo, just to show the agenda, our agenda for today, we have only 2 topics. One is talk a little bit about us and what is this activity of venture capital, what we have been done in the last couple of years, in fact, in the last 2 decades. But I'll be very, very brief about that. And then Rodolfo will talk a little bit about this idea of creating university spin-offs. So about us, so in a glance, Rodolfo, if you can switch in a glance, just to provide you some figures. We have 20 years of existence. Some of you may know us as Espírito Santo Ventures. We were Espírito Santo Ventures until 4 years ago. Today, and we were part of a bank group. Today we are a fully independent. Sorry, I'm receiving. Okay. I'm receiving a message that there are people in the waiting room. I'm going to admit them, I believe. Okay, no problem.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah, okay. So, thank you. So we are today a fully independent company, and we don't invest only in Portugal. We have a multi-geographic approach. In fact, 1/3 of our companies are in the US. We invested in US companies. We have today about 260 million euros of assets under management across 5 funds. I will elaborate a little bit on that on the next slide. We are a multi-stage investor, meaning that we can invest on a company, on a very, very young companies, and we can invest also in companies that have a little bit of maturity and are on later stages. We have made until now 60 investments. 16 investments. We have 1 unicorn and 3 dragons amongst our companies. If you don't know what it is, and please interrupt me if you have any questions. Please interrupt me. I think it's the best way to take this. And I will talk also a little bit. I will identify them in a minute. We have a very specific characteristic. It's unique in terms of the Portuguese venture capital ecosystem. We are a deep tech investor. What does this mean? Means that we invest in companies that are exploring technology, deep tech, developed at universities and research centers. So we don't invest in companies that are willing to develop a new brand of restaurants, or we don't invest in electronic commerce platforms. We invest in companies that are exploring technology coming from research, from universities and research labs. And until now, we have had 18 exits and three of them by an IPO. So about the team, and we have, you may know some of them. All the team from our investment team are engineers. This is something that's also distinctive in terms of venture capitalists. You may know, probably you may know Joaquin and all the engineers from Institute Superior Technique. That's why I said we are quite an IST spin-off. I myself, on my previous life, I made research. I was a researcher in INESC, in the speech processing, together with Luís Borges de Almeida and Isabel Trancoso. I lived that beautiful and wonderful life, changing it to the work on a very young startup. I ended up only doing 4 years of research. I jumped to that startup. I stayed there for 10 years. That startup at the time had only 10 employees. In fact, I was employee number 11. Today, that young startup is Novabase. It's one of the biggest IT Portuguese companies. And after Novabase, I moved to Banco Espírito Santo, and I joined the team of, at the time, Espírito Santo Ventures, today Armilar. So, Rodolfo will talk. Thank you. I was doing a little introduction about Rodolfo, but Rodolfo is made a very important contribution to the definition of the IP policy of Institute Superior Technique. So Rodolfo is an aerospace engineer also with an MBA and very experienced in these businesses of creating companies from the university knowledge. So about what we do, and this is a very complex diagram, but I would like to take the chance to explain what is venture capitalism, so what we do. So we invest in companies to support the development of those companies, but we are not a bank. We don't have money of our own. What we do is we convince our investors to trust us their money. They do that for a period of, let's say, about 10 years, 15 years. We use that money to invest in very young companies that need that money to their first steps and to go to the market. We help those companies to develop, and after, let's say, about between 5-10 years, we sell together with the entrepreneurs, with the founders of those companies. We sell those companies to international acquirers that are interested in having that technology in their companies. We do this by, how do we organize this activity? We organize it around funds, investment funds, in which our investors, to which our investors provide money. We have done that across already. We have done 5 runs, so 5 funds. Today, we have active this orange fund here, AVP5. It's our most recent fund. It has 55 million euros to invest in young companies coming out from universities. We have already invested in these 8 companies. This fund is only active 2 years from now. If you look at together with these companies, we have small logos here. These are the companies that we have invested with which of these funds. So in fund 1, we have invested with the company Just Clarity, a US company that we sold on a very profitable way together with the founders. AVP2, you should know at least two companies. One is Ship Idea, in which we were an investor, and also OutSystems, in which we are today still an investor. AVP3 is our 3rd fund. You see here Fidzai, it's our main main company in this fund, and also in our fund AVP4, I'm sorry. This fund, SR1, is a fund that is a very small fund that was created with the support of Institute Superior Technique. In fact, our investors in this fund are companies that are friends from supporters of the Institute Superior Technique, and that the Institute made the effort to join them around this initiative of creating this fund. This ISR-1F invested in Condessa, a spin-off from Institute Superior Technique, from Jaime Jorge. And so this is just to provide you a small overview of the funds we have invested in. So our main activity, as I've explained to you, is to first have our investors trusting in us to provide us their money, and second, using their money to invest in the best companies, in the best opportunities that we can find to support those companies, to support the development of those companies. So in the past, with our funds 1, 2, and a little bit with fund 3, not all the companies we have invested in were originated in universities. Since our fund iStart, we are more focused on opportunities that came out from universities. So Rodolfo, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the opportunities that we see that are posing today for people that are doing research and doing their PhDs in universities.
Yes, so thank you very much. And on a personal note, I just wanted to say I'm really happy to be here with you guys. I met Professor Santos Vitor, I think around 18 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, in the Netherlands, in a committee of the Aurora Program Board, where Professor Santos Vitor was the Portuguese representative. And I remember coming to him, approaching him. I was working as a young graduate trainee then, and we started a relationship. At that point, I was very excited by the way he was already very much advanced and looking at how Portugal could be part of these broader initiatives. So it's really I'm very happy to be here with you guys. ISR is in good hands. And what I wanted to talk to you about is in 2 slides, very, very simply. You know, I was just doing a little bit of research to see how Portuguese R&D researchers in general compare with our European peers in terms of how do we distribute our researchers between academia and business. And so if you look at this chart from 2017, the immediate feeling we have is that we basically have 35% of the researchers in the private sector here in Portugal. The average is about 50-50, and some of the countries that we would probably like to sort of look up to in terms of how they spin off technologies from the universities, they have a majority of researchers in the private sector. There's a lot to be taken into account in this chart, including the areas of research that each country has. And in Portugal, I was also looking at that data, and there's a significant part of researchers that go into social sciences in general, so which are prone to going into business. But still, if you look at this chart, I think the immediate reaction is there's probably a lot more that can be done by researchers in the private sector that is being done today. And so if you think of the private sector and the options that in terms of careers for researchers in Portugal, I would suggest that there are probably 2 main avenues for you guys. One is to go to established companies that are actively looking for PhDs, like Siemens. You know, you have telecom companies that have the infrastructure to welcome researchers and do really interesting jobs. And then the other one, I guess, is to spin off your own research. And so what we see a lot is, and we've invested in quite a few of these companies, even in this most recent fund that José mentioned. What we see a lot is like these PhD students nearly finishing, or they even decide that, you know, academia, they love it, but it's not what they want to do for the rest of their lives, or these postdocs that are looking for, you know, something else other than academia. And you have these people with outstanding skills that they've spent the last 5 or 10 years working really hard. Probably they're at the top of their knowledge sector, and they want to go for a spinoff. And so what I would like to submit to you is look at this as another option for your careers, in addition to academia, in addition to joining established enterprises. And we see this as possibly one option for you, and that's what we are here for. In case you choose, you know, the path less taken and start your own business, there are people like us, venture capitalists, and others who help support and finance spin-offs from universities, where, you know, a big part of your unique value proposition lies in your ability to master a technology, like José said, in a way that is much more profound than just knowing how to use a technology. So we're looking for people who actually develop unique technologies and master the technology beyond a technology user. So what we see and we currently see with this specific fund that we have, which is very much focused on technology transfer, is we see a lot of PhDs, people who have been doing research for a lot of years, and with the support of their lab directors or PhD supervisors, they take the step to say, okay, I love this. I loved doing research for a bunch of years. Now I want to try something different. And so, you know, you have multiple ways that you can go about your next steps, but essentially I think it's this will to do something else. And so I thought it was very interesting, the most recent email by Professor Santos Vitor calling out to the young people in ISR to join us. And in fact, in a way, you know, being young as a researcher or as a PhD is not the 18-year-old kid who comes up with a startup in his dorm, which can be hugely successful, of course. But what we're looking for here really is like this early stage career researchers who they're exceptional at what they do, but they want to do something more than just research or academia. So that's basically either you have this will or you don't. Nobody can push you into this. In case you do have this will, then there are means and ways that you can be supported. We are, regardless of being potential investors in your business, definitely would be more than welcome to, you know, support in any way, give you some advice, whatever. And that's why what Professor Santos Vitor also said in the beginning, that we were more than willing to have additional one-on-one bilateral talks, more than happy to do that. I think it's worthwhile just mentioning this chart that José set up whenever he goes to talk to a university. I think it's a very well positioned slide and visual of where people like us, venture capitalists, come in, and where sometimes there's a bit of confusion on where venture capital comes in, or even at an angel level comes in to spin off university research. And the thing is, people talk a lot about proof of concept, right? And in our discussions with many university officials and researchers, I think there's a concept that is very different between us and the people at universities. And by us, I mean investors in general, which is the concept of proof of concept for technology and proof of concept for your business. What we're interested in, and I think the vast majority of investors, is when the research is done, of course you can always improve on it, that's obvious, but once you don't really have to prove that this technology works as it's supposed to work, then you need to do what we call product market fit, which may involve some sort of MVP, some sort of even perhaps at a certain point prototype, but it's a very different concept. So if you think of, I still need to do some more research to prove that the papers I've written are actually applicable, it's probably too early to go and raise funds from professional venture capitals or even perhaps angels. once the research is sort of like consolidated and you have doubts about the market applicability, what sort of go-to-market strategy you need to come up with, then probably you're okay to start your own business and go fundraising. But just keep in mind that this terminology of proof of concept is oftentimes different between what university officials define it and what we as investors define it. And I asked José if I made any mistakes here. He's very good at explaining this chart if he wants to complete something.
No, in fact, that's the point. This is a chart I prepared just to clarify the ideas, because usually when we are on a research environment, people are used to ask for finance, but for something that is their laboratory proof of concept. So to further develop their research, but they are not worried, and they should not be worried with the market aspect of the applicability of their technology. But once you want to start a company, what you need to do is to see how can I make a product from the technology that I have developed. And that's where we usually come in. And we can invest as early as to do this proof of concept. So perhaps you don't have a company yet, but you have a technology, you have an idea of a product, and you want to see if it has some future. You want to make a test with a strong commitment that if that test results well, you will move ahead with the company. Okay, that's fine, and our fund can invest and support this kind of initiatives. Just one final aspect. So for those who are seeing this kind of approach for the first time, who are facing this possibility of developing their life around the creation of their own company, of course, the internet is a source of a lot of information. But what can I suggest to you as other sources of information, not only the internet? Talk with other companies, and St. Peter referred that we have here present some companies that were created out of ISR, from ISR people. So talk with other colleagues that started companies. Talk with investors, several of them, not only one of them, but several of them. And talk also with the technology transfer guys from the Institute Superior Technique. And you can ask them, okay, I have this technology, I have this IP, what can I do with this? I'm thinking in making a life of the work I have done in my PhD. So I think these are let's say, the ecosystem that I would suggest you to consider talking to see if it's viable to start a life based on the work that you have done on your PhD. I don't know, Rodolfo, I think we don't have more slides. Just we are open for questions. This was supposed to be a very open session, so we are open for questions. If you think it's useful.
Good. So we have time for questions now. Questions from the audience. Well, thanks for the presentation. So it's very to the point. So either the experienced entrepreneurs from the home team or the general audience, any questions, anyone, or comments? If not, maybe I can try to break the ice, and I have a question here. So what I heard many times is that well, and I know a little bit from experience, is that a very successful researcher is not necessarily a good entrepreneur, or at least he or she does not have all the required skills. So so probably you need to build a team, and you need to search for people, I mean, with skills complementary to yours. How is this process organized? Because I guess most of the people here, except for those who took this path already some years ago, in general, they are too much concentrated on their, let's say, engineering outcomes, but that is probably not enough. Would you like to comment this, or?
Yes, I can add. Yeah, in fact, it's very different to be a researcher and to be an entrepreneur. You need to have other skills. You might learn with time, and I think that's the preferred situation. I think that happened with some of the companies, or most of the companies that you have invited to be here. People started to be engineers. I was an engineer when I moved to Nova Vaz. I was supposed to do a job that was exclusively a technical job. I ended up learning other areas like the marketing, like how to sell. Sell is a very strange thing for an engineer. So as you know, if you say to an engineer, you need to sell. I'm not a salesman. I'm an engineer. I'm a researcher. But in fact, it's something that we learn to do. Manage people, manage a project, and manage the relation on the ecosystem that is built around the company, like the investors of the company, the customers of the company, the suppliers of the company, the employees of the company. So it's a more broad, activity. Usually, people ended up acquiring those skills, but that's not necessary. It's not necessary to have all the skills. I think the most important skill is being able to join around you the people with the right skills to build the correct team to address and to build a company. So if you think you are an excellent engineer and you know the technology, but you would like to have someone else to taking care about the sales, okay. I imagine it is not completely possible to be outside the sales world, but you can, let's say, delegate the sales to someone that is more tailored for that function. Also, the management function. So it's not impossible to build a company if you don't have the skills, even if you don't want to acquire some of those skills.
Okay, so.
What I would suggest is also what we see a lot of companies also looking back a little bit when I was in ISTs, you are quite right. I mean, the team, when you start a company that is going out and raising funds and meeting customers, you need sort of, if you are a solo founder, it's tough. And there is a tendency to think that you can sort of kick it off as a solo founder, get funded, and then raise the team. And perhaps some of these initial employees can also be founders. It's actually tough from an investor point of view to talk to a single point of failure, which is he may be or she may be a brilliant researcher. She may even have all these extra skills to do this. But thinking of the team from the start may actually be a very good thing for you. There are quite a few accelerator programs. There are other ways and means to find people who are interested. Even some spin-offs from IST that I know from my time, that, you know, there was an attempt from the beginning to set up a team. And this is good because then you get to know each other a little bit for a few months before a formal onboarding is done. You know, you guys are going to be married for a long time if you set up as co-founders, probably longer than many marriages last. So yeah, the team is not just the complement of these skills, but it's also whether or not from the outside it looks like a good fit and a good team. So that's the only thing I would add is date for a while before you get married.
That's a good piece of advice.
Sometimes
I think
people.
Paul also has a question.
Yeah.
We have Paul.
João is also asking for a question. Yeah.
I don't know if José wanted to complete something.
No. Go ahead.
Okay. I feel like there's an interesting point you're making in the last slide, which is that there's a disconnect between the researcher's mind and the product mind. And so what, in your opinion, are the main failures researchers normally make in, for example, evaluating a market, or what are some of the mistakes they make when shifting from this researcher mindset to this more product-oriented marketing mindset?
I would not say it's a mistake. I would say it's more a lack of experience and lack of doing something. As you know, when you do it once, you do it twice, at the third time you will do it very well. So I think that when you develop, where you are developing technology, you are worried about if it works. First, theoretically. Second, if it works on the lab. But having a technology and having a product is something that people will be using, that that will be easy for people to use, that will be appealing for people to use, and that's a different transition, a different demand from something coming out from a lab. I remember one thing is to develop a prototype in the lab that you just need to guarantee that for a certain input you have a certain output. The other thing is what are the market needs, what are the best way to use the technology to address that need. How can I build something in a very cost-effective way that can help people solving the problem? So I think it's more a question of the mindset and the experience, because as well as being a researcher requires some training and experience, also developing a product requires train and experience, something that you take over time. I don't know if I answered your...
May I add just something to that answer? Having been on the side of an entrepreneur that has done that, the main difficulty is that when we start, we think that the outside world is rational, but the outside world is irrational at every sense of the word. So don't expect your customers to be rational. Don't expect your suppliers to be rational. Don't expect your shareholders to be rational. At some point in time, all of them will take actions that completely surprise you, and you need to have a contingency plan. And that is probably where the true mastery of the whole deal of being an entrepreneur lies, is that you need to be prepared for the most unforeseen circumstances. We just had a pandemic 3 months ago, and now all of the startups are struggling. How will we survive this? Because obviously no business plan included that. So by definition, it's an impossible task, but some of us do survive, at least for some time over here. So wish you all the best of luck, but yeah, you can do it. It's just, there's no formula to do it. And that's the biggest mindset change that you need to face.
I think João Gomes Mota was, yeah, okay.
So in a nutshell, I do agree with what has been said before. Just want to add, yes, we are available if any of you guys that are listening to us wants to have a chat. We are physically next to Alameda, so you are welcome, as long as you bring your masks and so on. So just leave us a note. Second, adding upon what José Guerreiro said, in addition to looking for funding, you should also look for clients. Look for the client's money, go for it. In some cases, like biosciences, this is much harder because you have clinical trials that last for 5 to 10 years, so you are much further away from the market. But when ISR specialties are concerned, you should look for businesses that will be in the market, I would say, between 12 and 24 months maximum. So if you have something but much far-fetched than that, probably you are before the stage that you should be looking for funding. Third lesson I learned from IN Plus course that I was taught in 2003 by the Department of Engenharia Mecânica, just a few blocks down from the ISR. Ethics pays. It's not often said, but we are on a culture that often tells you that cutting the corners is better, but in the long term, ethics pays. If you are starting a company or joining a very young company, you have nothing but your credibility and your passion. So if you start cutting the corners and shaming and making some scams and things, you will be found out sooner than you'll realize. Last note, sometimes you have a passion to do something and the market is looking for another thing. It happened to me. I was doing archaeology with LiDAR in 2003. So I went for clients and no one wanted to pay for it. Said, it's great, it's for free, but I won't pay for it. So I went to look for a job, like most of you will. And in my new job, which was with EDP, Electricity of Portugal, I found something that where I could use my research and do something that I would be paid for. So it's important that you can be somehow compromising and say, okay, I love to do this on that field, so I have to combine both, so everyone will be sufficiently happy about it. That's it.
Okay, excellent. Okay, I see Alex and Pedro Soares, I don't know who started first. Pedro, do you want to
Thank you
start?
for the answers. Oh.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, thank you for the answers. It's very interesting also to see this personal perspective of your own journey. So thank you very much.
Pedro Soares, can you, I think I have to unmute you or?
Unmute. I'm okay. So first of all, thank you, José and Victor, for inviting me to be here. And I was complimenting the answers to Paul. Some answers have already been done. He asked about common mistakes, and I would like to say 3 things that I think that new entrepreneurs tend to underestimate. The first one is relations, and business is all about trust. Is a phrase that I got from an American, and I really like this phrase because I see it says everything. Business is all about trust. So you wouldn't get any money from the venture capital if you don't pass trust in all the aspects, in all the, as a person, as your idea, as the knowledge you have. And the first clients I got was not because of the product I was selling to them, but because I gave them trust. I went there many times. I told I was able to do it. I showed how it worked. So I did a lot of efforts to do trust. And I think that in the beginning, with that trust, we build relationships, and that relationships opens doors to other relationships. And at least for me in the beginning, I tend to underestimate how important this network and this trust is to make business. The second thing we tend to underestimate is the cash. As an entrepreneur, we are optimists, right? Otherwise we wouldn't be an entrepreneur. No one creates a company if he's not an optimist. And otherwise we'll close very shortly because it's so hard and so many difficulties come every week that if you are not optimist, or at least you need to have on your side someone really optimist, you don't make it. But this optimism can also be in a certain way an enemy when relates with cash, because as you are an optimist, you think you will go to the market in 1 year, but you will take 2 years. Or you think that your clients will be paying in 1 month, but they will pay in 6 months. And so count with that. And even if you think you will do it with your 5,000 euros, don't believe in yourself and say, I'll need 20, okay? And it's much better to get the money and don't use it than to get to a situation where you go to meet the bank or the VC or your father or your wife to ask some money because you are running out of money and you didn't plan for it. So you are already in troubles if you are in that position. So anticipate money and don't forget you are an optimist if you are doing a company. And the third thing, maybe the most important, is ask authorization to your wife or your husband because, and this is really the more important, because to be an entrepreneur is a 24 hours job. Your head is always there. It's with pleasure, but it's really I don't know if absorbent is the word in English. I mean, no weekends, no, you mostly in the beginning, when you are with so much uncertain about the product, about the market, it's really a full-time job. And for sure, you will have moments with great pleasure when you get your first order, when you get your first 10,000 euros in the bank. But you also have moments very difficult. And the worst thing you can have is to get at home after a very tough day and have your wife saying, "I told you so, I told you for not doing that," you know? So it's really important that what you want to hear in that moment is, don't give up, you will be able to do that, you'll get there, just some more effort. And I was an entrepreneur for 18 years. I started in 2001 and I sold my company last November. And I'm sure I wouldn't be able to do this 18 years if it wasn't my wife, you know, saying in the tough difficulties, you'll be able to do that. One more personal note, using Rodolfo terminology, the company was founded 18 years ago. Santos Vitor and Alexandre Bernardino that are here present were my co-founders, and we have created that, and their support was really important in the first steps of the company. 18 years ago, to create a company was not so common as it is nowadays. It's not common nowadays, okay, but it was less frequent, let's say, than today. And we didn't have yet the companies we have today, the OutSystems, the FeedZai, the Ship idea. OutSystems and Ship idea was just started, so we didn't have unicorns at the time in Portugal. So our colleagues were asking what were we doing exactly by creating a company. My parents were asking, what are you waiting for to get a salary? So to have the support of two people like Alexandre and José that knew myself and my other co-founder Bernardo and were with us in the boat was really important for us in that moment to go ahead and start this company 18 years ago. So I didn't have the chance before of thanking them publicly. So I take this moment for that, to thank for José Santos Vitor and for Alex what they did for us 18 years ago. And I think that's it. That's what I wanted to share with you.
Ashan, let me add, I think you said 2 or 3 things that result from your experience, the experience with your company. I think one of the aspects that is key, and that is true, I think trust is one of the most important assets that you can build around the company, and it's very important that you don't jeopardize that. So don't cut corners. I think that was Gomes Mota that said that don't cut corners. That's very, very important. So choose very well the partners that we're going to have. Don't have afraid to say no. So if you're going to leave, for example, if you're going to request to approach an investor, choose very well that investor. So inform if he is the kind of investor that invests in the company, the kind of companies that you are going to build, because not all investors are equal. One are experts in one area, the other are experts in other area. If they can help you in build your company, if they can help you later in exiting the company, talk with companies that were invested by that VC. take references from them, because they will take references from you. If you're going to start a company, they will do a due diligence on you, see if you are an honest person, a knowledgeable person. Do the same about them. So see if they are people with whom you can work, and you can count on the good and the bad times. That is very important. I see, and you said another thing, that is cash for companies. Cash is king, and that was something that you said with I think with the experience of someone that passed the good and bad moments, and that is right. So I think that someone was asking what is the difference of the skills of someone that is doing a research project and someone that is running a company. I think that this care about if the company has money, if it will exist next month, are we going to be able to sell what we are expected to sell? All this is very important to guarantee the survival of the company. And you don't raise money when you need it. You should raise the money when you don't need it. If you raise money when you need it, you will be in a problem. So because you are not in good shape, and there will be opportunistic people that will take advantage of that. I don't want to take more time.
Okay, fantastic. I see the hands here of Alexandre Bernardino in the Atabac. Alex, please.
Well, if you allow me to be first, I will have to leave the meeting at 6 o'clock, but I didn't want to lose the opportunity.
Go ahead, yeah.
I didn't want to lose the opportunity to salute everybody in the meeting. It's very nice to see so many faces from former collaborators and students, and know that everything is going well with their companies. And also salute José Guerreiro and Rodolfo Condessa. I didn't know your faces. It's nice now to know your faces. I've read the IP regulation of IST many times, so Rodolfo, very nice job. It was also very, very important.
Sorry.
Sorry. Sorry.
It was a secret.
Okay. Yeah, so my question, and also thanks for the nice words from Pedro Soares. And it's also nice to know that there are some common things between entrepreneurs and professors and researchers. We have to negotiate with our wives, and we also have to work 25 hours a day. My question is on intellectual property. Okay, so this is another thing that researchers sometimes have doubts and have mixed feelings about how should we care about our research. So if we should publish our patent or really make it a secret so that we don't get an edge. So I'd like to know from you some ideas or some tricks that we can let our students and our researchers know to manage this aspect in the best way possible.
You want me to tackle that one? Yes. Actually, Alexandre, it's a very good question, and it's a question that, for example, is addressed at a very, very young age, for example, in the United States. So I think that in Europe in general, but mostly in Latin Europe or Southern Europe, if you will, this sort of question still comes up. Whereas in the United States, this issue is totally solved. And it's because universities have come up with, and even before university, they have come up with very, very clear procedures, very clear understanding on how to do this. And even students sort of like are taught as soon as they come into the university about how to manage their IP, what are their rights, what are their obligations. And in fact, you can have the best of both worlds if the whole system is working. So basically, to the very essential question, should I publish or should I keep it secret? The answer is actually quite simple. What you do is you do an invention disclosure to your technology transfer office. And so there's like this form online. And if they are fast enough in their assessment, what they can just tell you quite quickly is, look, in our opinion, you should try to protect this potential invention before you publish your paper. And in fact, there are some tricks that you can use in the patent system, which I'm a little bit against it, but you can still use it if you're sophisticated enough, called the provisional patent application. And so basically, with the paper that you were going to publish anyway, or even your thesis, you can actually deposit this paper and thesis in the patent office, and only later on, you have about a year, later on you can actually elaborate the detailed patent application text. So a very direct answer to you is you can actually have the best of both worlds if you communicate with certain advance to the TTO, and they make a decision whether or not they want to protect it. And if you're in a tight calendar, you can always use this approach, which is deposit the thesis or the paper itself, and then you have a year to actually write the patent application.
Thank you.
I see the hand of Atabak now. If there are other questions, please raise your hands in the Zoom panel. Okay, Atabak, please.
Okay, so thank you so much for all these very practical advices. One thing I see is it was also emphasized a few times here is researching the clients first. And I think one of the even mistakes that you mentioned was that even despite researching the clients, it still didn't end up working because the clients did like the idea but didn't want to pay for it. So there were clients but not paying clients maybe. I wanted to see what are the guidelines that you have for this step. Is this very problem specific, or there are certain common mistakes that people do that maybe we can avoid in the beginning?
Okay.
I can perhaps provide a very short answer and leave the space for the guys that have companies and experience to say, but I think that don't try to sell what you have done. Try to sell a solution for the customer's problem. So I think the first step is try to understand what is the customer problem, and then try to fulfill it with a solution. I think that if you really have a great solution for a big problem, the customer will want your solution and we will pay for it. So try to, the bigger the problem they have, the best your solutions address the problem, I think bigger the willingness they have to buy from you. So don't address small problems. Don't solve problems only on incomplete way. Be very focused on addressing big problems and have solutions that really solve that problem on a disruptive way. I think that's the main worry that should be in your head.
Okay, so I see more. Any other comment or okay? I see Part has raised his hand. Part.
Yeah, thanks, Professor, for the opportunity, and it was quite exciting to listen to all of you. At a very basic level, I have a very naive question. So pardon me for my stupid questions, but I have just two small questions. That people say that, like we have many examples, people start with zero money and everything. So you people have achieved many different things in this sector. So is it possible to start with zero money in this framework of venture capitalists and investors and so on? And another small question is that, what is the difference between the business incubators and VCs? So you can, yeah, please.
Okay, I'll answer the first one, and I will suggest Rodolfo to address the second one. So yes, it is possible, and most of the entrepreneurs don't have money to start their business. That's the real problem. So they have they have a technology, a solution for a problem, but they don't have money to build the first, to spend the money that they need to set up the company, because you start having costs before you have profits. So that's the problem. So don't worry if you don't have the money. You have the solution, and if you are willing to work for that solution, because it's not enough to have the idea. I heard once from a guy that says, well, I have a lot of ideas today when I take my shower, but that doesn't have value. So you need to take your idea and do something with it. So if you have a technology, an idea to build a product, and you are willing to do it, I think that you should approach your investors with affirmatively saying, this is what I want to do. I have this technology, I have this vision. Either you agree with me or not. If you don't agree, I will go to talk to another investor to see, until I find someone that agree with me. But you don't need to have money. Your commitment in developing the solution and bringing the technology is what usually investors want to know. Of course, if you say to the investors, well, I was so sure about my idea that I spend, let's say, 2,000 euros in buying, or 10,000 euros in buying the first equipment, or the first, okay, that will have a bigger value. So if on top of your commitment and your technology, you put your money, okay, that will be better, but it's not necessary.
Okay.
Okay, well, a lot of good advice. Pedro, do you want to comment this? Yeah, Pedro, please.
You're mute, I think.
Unmute. Okay. I can just give a suggestion to both of you. I mean, the best way to understand if the market is willing to get our technology or not is to prototype, is to meet a customer and say, Mr. Customer, I'm a researcher, I'm in ISR, would you like to do a prototype with me? Okay, so if you invest time on him, and if you feel that he's investing time on you, then it means that it may mean something to the guy and he's interested in technology. So you have a good chance that there is a market out there because someone was interested in your prototype. This is also, in the same way you can start, in this way you can start the company with zero money, because in fact, if you are a researcher, if you are getting paid to be a researcher, and you can do an extra mile over the weekends or at night to accomplish a project, a prototype with a real customer, you are in fact starting your company with zero money. And I think it's the best way is to start. Because for sure you will value a lot more money for these guys. Rodolfo and José can say that if you already proved your technology with the prototype, and you can talk with them in a different way. So yeah.
So I can pick up a little bit on also following José's lead. And let me just start with something that I think is really important when we talk to, so just for you to get a bit of an idea of the numbers of startups that we look at every year. It's like over 600, 700 startups that we somehow look at every year. And then we end up investing in 1% or less than 2%. So we see a lot of stuff, even if we don't get to have the fun that Pedro has when he built his company and then sold it. But we get to see a lot of patterns. And one of the things we see is, I absolutely underline what Pedro said about trust. And so trust really is like in every single way. And like João also mentioned, the no cutting corners, it's really important. But there's something else, which I think is, an entrepreneur is typically an inspirational person. And so, you know, I remember I also met Pedro many years ago, and I went over to what was, it wasn't even Agora at that point, was Absorbit, and you feel this, you know, you feel like there's this inspirational aspect about entrepreneurs, regardless of where they come from. And so it's something that needs to come from within, and it must be because it needs to be like this. You're not going to convince your wife that it's worth it unless you inspire trust and humility. But so that's just one point. The other point is there was a mention about the incubators, accelerators, venture capital. So it's actually very easy. You guys are all researchers, PhD students, or postdocs, so you're all incredibly smart. This whole thing about the technicalities of starting a business or managing IP, or there are a lot of jargon in this industry, entrepreneurship industry, like MVP, pivoting, 0 to 1, scale up, unicorn. This is all easy. All you need to do is put yourselves out there. And that's where incubators and accelerators actually can be useful. You see, IST does not have a physical incubator. Other universities do, like Coimbra, Aveiro, and others. And they're actually useful, but there are additional resources for you around if you guys want to start a business, or if you want to take sort of like a step approach before starting the business, going into the registry and getting your own business, which is these programs that you can incubate, you can accelerate, and through them, you can actually experiment and test whether or not you like it. I'm not saying that you should do this as a first step. In fact, I would suggest that, like Pedro said, in his days, there weren't, well, you're not that old, but in your 18 years ago, there weren't incubators or accelerators, and they did it anyway, right? So, but these are here now, and there are quite a lot of them that can be useful for you guys if you want to put your toes in the water and see if you like it. And they help you in another way, which is to teach you these little tricks about how to frame your ideas to an investor, how to contact potential customers, how to sort of like make your product development into what Pedro was saying, like these MVPs, these minimum viable products, which are little breadboards or pilots that are not that hard to do, but enable you to test something with your customers. So I would strongly suggest that if any of you guys are interested in going through this path of experimenting entrepreneurship, there are quite a lot of resources out there. And José was mentioning a few. There are incubators, accelerators. Venture capitalists are less of a pre-startup. They provide you money. We, I think at Armilar, are a little bit different in the sense that we are, even in this fund, we have invested in teams that were right out of university or just started their businesses immediately, no revenue, nothing. Product wasn't even complete at that point. So that's one option. But I would, if you want, we can get in touch after this event, and I can give you some pointers. We have the BGI accelerator, BTI sometimes does some of these things, and there are quite a few others. So just keep this in mind, that it's not that hard to understand these technicalities, and just basically understand your next steps.
Rodolfo, just to remind, last week I was on an event that was organized by IST, that was a lab to market. It's precisely tailored to PhD students with technology and willing to see how they can build a product based on their PhD. And so it's amazing the evolution that those teams had from the first time when they presented to this initiative as researchers, to the final session when they pitch their companies. They were not companies, but they were, let's say, trained on a very short period of time to pitch like they had a company and willing to raise money for their company. So even inside IST, you have some resources if you want to be more near your house. IST, you can talk with the TTO and know what kind of support you can have for that.
Very good, thanks. I see Shubham wants to put a question. Shubham, please.
Yeah, hello, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the panelists for their amazing insights. It's been great. So my question was in line with the earlier question by Alexander, and in a different direction though. So we talked about protecting IP and all those things, but I'm saying if we are exploring a business model that deals with open sourcing the technology that we are developing. So like, does the conversation remains the same with respect to how you start and like how you deal with IST and technology transfer and all those things, or does it take a completely different turn in that case?
I'm sorry, it was very hard.
Yeah, the sound is not very good. I understood you are concerned with the open source technology as opposed to patenting your ideas. Is that it, or?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. That's it.
Okay. Protection versus open sourcing your ideas, technology. Yep. Okay. Comments, anyone? Or?
I'm sorry, your question was specifically with respect to the procedures that you have to take into account with your TTO, or is it regarding the business model for using an open source technology versus a patent protected technology?
I would say it's the former, the first one.
The first one?
Yeah.
So I mean, if the technology itself is open source, I'm not sure whether you would have to go to the TTO. That's something you can check with them, but it depends on the background IP status of the project that you were, based on which you're planning to start your business. And if the IP itself is open source, unless I'm mistaken, I wouldn't think that you...
I was not sure if the question was that, or was, should I protect my technology and register the IP, or should I take it to the market as an open source and make it available as an open source? I was not sure.
Actually, it was the one that we were just discussing. Like I mean, okay, let's assume that open source is the way to go. So in that case, how do we deal with this? The conversation remains the same, that it is just another venture, or do we have to think things differently in regards to how we approach the market, let's say, from an IST perspective, of course.
I would say that if you conclude that open source is the way to go, that is the result of your thinking, analyzing the market, and knowing that there is a way to address the market with an open source technology. So not on the other way around. So I think you don't decide, okay, let's take an open source initiative for my technology, and then I will decide I will address the market. That should be on the opposite way, a consequence. So if you see there is a way, a feasible way to address the market, using it as an open source, okay, then do it. And I don't know if I helped.
No, you did. I mean, you definitely pointed me in the right direction, I would say.
Okay, I'm afraid we are already exceeding the time we have reserved for this, but if there is any urgent question, we can still take one more. No? Okay, I have a few more, but we can take a few more offline, and then we will send out the contacts of everyone, and so both the speakers that I mean, you all know, but also the entrepreneurs from ISR, from João Gomes Mota, Pedro Soares, Ricardo Ferreira, Mark Barbosa, and Paulo Alvito. So we will provide you also the names and links of their companies, because they were pioneers. So Pedro mentioned that when we started, it was not at all common to do these things those days, not at all common. We were totally ignorant for many of the steps. I learned a lot from Pedro, and he's one of my heroes these days. So he was kind enough to thank me, but I think he did an amazing job. And besides, I think we heard lots of very inspiring advice from the presenters and our spin-offs. So I learned that expect the world out there to be irrational. That's Marco Barbosa's statement. So I thought this was exclusive from academia, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So be prepared for unexpected and uncertainty. I think it's a very good piece of advice. So I heard about ethics and focus on clients. I think it's a very important and no cutting corners. So message that João Gomes Mota shared with us. Well, Pedro Soares mentioned a lot. So one of your greatest assets maybe is trust. So you have your partners and business partners have to trust you. That's a very big asset. And you have to be optimist to take this route, this life option. and have the support of the family. That's very important. 24/7 or maybe even more. IP is an issue, so we have looked into this, that we can start with the zero money. That was the answer to part. So we don't have to be sitting on a pile of money to start. So money is out there. So the VCs companies are there for you and to provide the money. So it's, and we have learned, I mean, lots of also advice related how to start, what is the first step. And I think the very first step is to attend this seminar. I'd like to thank a lot our guests to be here and to share with us the experience of Armilar and your personal experience being entrepreneurs before joining Armilar. So you know very, very well what you're talking about. So thanks a lot for sharing all this immense knowledge with us and experience. And also very importantly, to make yourselves available for further bilateral conversations and discussions after we conclude this seminar. So if you don't mind, I'm sorry, but maybe we should stop here. Well, thank you everybody. And so look forward to seeing you all, and we will follow up on this. So thank you.
Thank you from our side.